the shittiest guy in any band I'm in. So give it up for James Rasmussen. And my fathead brothers, Bucky Berger and Teddy Leonard. Now I saw there was a stool up here. No one's used it, so I'm just going to use this. You know, when I first started playing, I listened to so many different harmonica players, and I would try and imitate them. And then, you know, like after maybe 15 or 20 years, I just kind of stopped listening to the stuff, and you sort of pick up different things from different players, and, you know, some of the things sort of stick with you. So rather than play a bunch of full tunes, I thought I'd maybe talk about some of my influences and play little bits of songs. So the first thing, Paul mentioned Sonny Terry earlier, but before I get to Sonny Terry, I mean, I think the thing about any instrument that's important is you got to have good tone, and maybe not knowing so many notes will get you a lot further ahead than, you know, playing a million miles an hour and sounding like shit. And, you know, I mean, you could take one note. If I just play one note in the air, I mean, that doesn't sound like music, but as soon as you put, you know, time to that and put it in a certain spot, you know, suddenly you got something going on, and I could play a blues in the key of E just using one note and, you know, just putting it anywhere I want. So help me out here, fellas. Key of E. So, I mean, there's one note. I mean, you wouldn't want to put that out on a record or nothing, but it works. So Sonny Terry, he was the first guy I got to see because he would play in coffee houses down in Yorkville. I'd go to the Riverboat. And you have to remember, these guys, you know, they used to play factories and turpentine camps and stuff like that. They didn't have PAs. They didn't even have bands, you know. I mean, you're talking about a blind guy standing on the corner. So often he'd play by himself, and he'd be everything. He'd be the drums, and so I'm just going to try a short bit of this by myself. And of course, the thing about Sonny Terry, he always said, you know, I mean, like the whole essence of the blues is to improvise and never play the same thing the same way twice. That would be a mortal blues sin. And he always told this story about how he was once in a Broadway show, and it's true, he was. He had this very sort of stereotypical part, and you know, he always told the story of how the producer called him down and said, "Hey, get down here, Sonny Terry, I need somebody to play harmonica for this Broadway show we're doing." He said, "Okay, I'll be right down." And he got down there and he auditioned for the guy, and the guy says, "Man, that's great. You got the part, but there's only one thing you got to do." He said, "What's that, man?" He says, "Well, you got to play the same thing the same way every night." Sonny Terry said, "Well, I can't play the same thing the same way every night." He says, "You got to do it, man." He says, "I can't do it, man." He says, "You got to play the same thing the same way every night." And it went on and on and on and on and on like that. And finally, Sonny Terry got mad and he said, "Shit, how much you gonna pay me to do this anyway?" And when he told him, he said, "Hell yes, I'll play the same thing the same way every night." So here's a little stuff I got from Sonny Terry. on a little bit of pretty feet. She got great big legs on a little bit of pretty feet. Well, the boys always when she walked down the street. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Sure look fine on me. Now, what I didn't know when I started out that you can play on a bunch of different keys on any one harmonica. And one of the guys I saw early on at the Le Coq d'Or Tavern was Jimmy Reed. And Jimmy played guitar and rack harp. And, you know, so he wouldn't have to keep changing harmonicas all the time. A lot of his songs were in the key of E and the key of A. So, I'm not here. You know, he would play in these different keys on the one harp, and I didn't know that you could play in different keys on different harps. And I'd hear Sonny Terry go, or hear Jimmy Reed go, and I'd hear that, and it would sound like so piercing and fat and full, but I just knew about playing in the sort of traditional cross harp way that they call second position. I'd find those notes on there, and I would sound like such a dork of a white guy because I'm listening to the Jimmy Reed record, and I'm hearing him, you know, and you know it just has so much stuff on it, and then I'd find those notes on the harp, and I go. I'm like, well, why don't sound like him? And then I realized, he's playing a different harp. So, you know, let's just do, so this is what they call first position. This is playing in the same key that the harmonica's in. So let's just do a Jimmy Reed in the key of A for a couple verses. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now you can play down on the bottom end too. You know, the thing I liked about Jimmy Reed is that, you know, because he was playing on a rack, it wasn't all precision, you know. A lot of times he'd sort of be playing two notes at once, and it was just that sloppiness that gave it such a unique thing. You get all these different overtones in that. Another guy that I listened to a lot of was, or that I got to see a lot was James Cotton, and of course playing through an amp. Yes. And I just happen to have one here. He had such a big sound. Switched it on. Well, yeah, he always turned his amp on first. You know, and I mean, just little things like just the way he would kind of trail off the. So, well, let's try sort of something James Cottonish. I don't know what should we do. A key of E. Whoa. guy that I first sort of clued into what Paul was talking about earlier about tongue blocking, you know, because those little trills that you do, you know, I didn't know about putting my tongue into it, but when you do, it suddenly makes it sound a lot bigger, kind of puts you almost in mind of a big Hammond organ with the Leslie going around. So, you know, when Cotton would start a slow blues, like, I mean, it was just so huge and powerful. And of course, he, you know, his big influence was Sonny Boy Williamson. And Paul was talking about that there was two Sonny Boy Williamsons, and the first one was around in the 30s, and you know he had all the, you know, he was a very rhythmic player, playing like Good Morning Little Schoolgirl and you know, the original version of Sloppy Drunk. And then the other guy, Rice Miller, came along after him and called himself the original Sonny Boy Williamson. So, oh yeah, you know, thanks to Andrew Galloway at Electrify Records, I'm sometimes invited to some of these recording sessions he's done, and he had Billy Boy Arnold from Chicago up here to do a Sonny Boy Williamson record, and I didn't know which Sonny Boy he was going to be doing. We were just sitting around talking, and I said, "Man, that's cool that you're doing a Sonny Boy Williamson record." I said, I love that stuff. Bring it on home, you know. Don't start me talking. I'm naming all these, you know, Sonny Boy #2 songs. And he says, "Oh no, I'm doing the other Sonny Boy, the original Sonny Boy." I said, "Oh, he was good, but I like the other guy better." And he, you know, suddenly he just turned on me. He says, "What kind of man steals another man's name? You tell me that." He said, "Ray Charles liked the first Sonny Boy. What's the matter with Ray Charles?" He said, "Nat King Cole liked the first Sonny Boy better than the second Sonny Boy. What's the matter with Nat King Cole?" I said, "Sorry." So, finally, we got to play together later that night, and I redeemed myself. But I was definitely on thin ice. Maybe let's do some Sonny Boy Williamson. He, you know, the second Sonny Boy, he was just such a great player because he didn't play a lot of notes, but he just had such a beautiful pocket, and you know, his songs always had a bit of a sense of humor in it, and his playing did as well. So let's try some Sonny Boy. No, I'm coming down from the 5 in A. You've been talking about your woman, man, I sure wish you'd see mine. You've been talking about your girl, man, I sure wish you'd see mine. Well, every time she starts loving, she brings outside to the blind. I know her daddy must have been a millionaire, 'cause I could tell by the way she walked. I know her daddy must have been a millionaire, 'cause I could tell by the way that she walked. And every time she started loving, the daddy and dog begin to talk. I remember last Sunday morning, the devil was baking bread. Man, the next one came down and held up his head and said, "Man, ain't she pretty? The whole state knows she's fine." And every time she stops, she brings eyesight to the blind. Boy Williamson. You know, of course, there were so many guys out there. I mean, you know, the history books always say Sonny Boy, Little Walter, and Big Walter Horton were the big three, but, you know, there was all kinds of different people around there. Even Howlin' Wolf, the way he played harmonica. And you have to keep in mind that Howlin' Wolf was a huge specimen of a human being. I mean, his head alone was, I've seen him, like his head was that big, you know, so the heart was so tiny that, you know, part of the thing about his sound is like, he just wouldn't pinpoint actual notes. He'd be getting about 5 or 6 other notes beside it, so you'd hear him do stuff like you know, and that, you know, the little things like that, you know, are things that have sort of stayed with me, like how you can sometimes, you don't always need to be real precise, you know, sometimes being loose and sloppy, you get a whole nother sound. You know, Little Walter is a guy that seems to be the real measuring stick. You know, his heyday was in the 50s. I don't know if any of you seen a guy around town named Dr. Nick, but he plays, you know, he's really studied him, and he'll be the first guy to tell you, it's like, oh, Hal, Little Walter, I mean, you know, there's a lot of great harp players out there, don't you think so? Well, but like little Walter, he's really the best going, I'll tell you. That's my Dr. Nick imitation. If you knew him, you'd know that that's right dead on. You know, so, I mean, he's the guy, you know, like, to me, like, if you wanted to learn rock and roll guitar, you would listen to Chuck Berry and take all those licks and then, you know, just kind of use them at your will. And Little Walter's the same way. Like, every song that he played is like a masterpiece, and there's just a million different licks. And he definitely was the most inventive guy. You know, so he's someone, you know, if you were going to sit down and figure some things out, that you might want to check out some of his stuff. And he was the first guy that I realized played in something called third position as well. That's where, like, say if you're playing on an A harmonica, you're playing in the key of B, so all your notes are draw notes. And he had this one thing that was so bizarre that it took a while to figure out, but he would well, stumble along with me in the key of B like this. 2, 1, 2, 3. Was the kind of kingpin that really spearheaded that whole West Coast blues movement, which has a lot of swing in it, and he sort of translated this third position stuff onto a chromatic harp. Whoa! I don't play chromatic harp too often, but just to show you that, you know, how they're related. This is in the key of C, and so is this. So a lot of things work the same way. If I go, it works the same if I play something like I'm Ready. It works on this too. Another thing you can check out in your playing is mess around with the chromatic. Now, just like you can change keys in these, you can also, on the chromatic, like if I'm playing in cross harp, which puts me in the key of G, I could play in the key of G on one of these. So let's just try a couple verses of kind of like a jazzy, medium thing in G major. So this is kind of a jazz, what did I call that? Kind of a medium jazz. This is the technical term, what they call a sort of medium jazzy kind of 2 verses in the key of G. So that's kind of you know, now the chromatic harmonica, and you know, Howard talked a bit about playing melodic. I'm getting shocks off of this. talked about playing melodic, and I mentioned you can play in a bunch of different keys, and for each different key you play in, they call that playing in a different position. And you know, there's three main ones, first, second, and third, but there's some really sort of bizarre ones as you keep going around that circle of fifths. And one that I hardly ever use, but if I ever get stuck, you know, because the thing about these is there's no sharp or flat notes. It's just basically the white notes of a piano. And you know, there's a way with overblows that you can make things go up. But another way of thinking is that if you play everything bent, when you do want to get a certain note, you know, to play a melody, then you just open it up and play the note natural. So that enables you to play some songs that you normally wouldn't play, like... stuff like that, or if you can help me out with this. So key of that. That sort of satisfies my love of baseball and music more than once. And you know, that stuff like that comes in handy too. Like if you're playing a song that might have a modulation, and we'll give you a bit of this. I'll do Ico in F, and so it'll go down to the G flat, and we'll finally end it in G flat. So just me and Buck will start it out. In F, and then that little bridge part goes down to E flat. So there's a way that you don't have to switch harmonicas. You know, sometimes some of those country guys would switch harps, like when you'd hear Charlie McCoy doing stuff like... not that it's like a bad thing or anything like that, but just knowing those different positions when you're playing over different chords is really going to help you be able to expand, you know, the things that you play, especially when you're playing in cross harp. You know, I can remember back when I started out, like playing on the 5 chord was when you would sort of not play very much because it was a little harder to find notes that worked. But then once I started getting into 3rd position, which is playing on that 5th chord, that really opens up a lot of the stuff. Is there any questions or anything? I know I'm kind of rambling on here. Just 40 stunned faces. No questions? Where's Paul? I don't even know how long I'm supposed to be up here. Oh, Paul went home. Oh. How long am I supposed to go here?
11:30.
11:30. Hey, do you, how can you tell when a harmonica player's at your door? The doorbell feeds back. Hey, let's not turn into a mob. Let's see.
Let's not have a ride on our hands here.
One more. Okay. Let's, well, let's do, close to you in E.
Long one, right?
Yeah. Your baby ass, white on rice, close to your baby ass, cold is to ice, close to your baby ass, hair on your head, close to your baby now. Leave what I said, I wanna get close to you, darling. Let me get close to you, darling. I won't get so close to you. Don't know what to say. I wanna get close to your baby ass, sight in your eye, close to your baby like piggies to flies, close to your baby ass, aim to a hand, close to your baby just like Siamese twins, close to your baby. Let me get close to you, darling, now. I won't get so close to you.